The name of this show is Living Wisdom, and I'm Patty Paul. Today my guest is my wonderful friend Lyn Eyman, and she's going to be channeling a being friend who's wise and unconditionally loving by the name of Dillon. And since we want to devote most of our time to Dillon's wisdom, I'm going to invite Lyn to begin her channeling process. And while she's doing that, the credits will roll, and by the time the credits are over or shortly after, we will have Dillon with us. So please begin.
Well, good morning, dear Patty.
Oh, good morning, Dillon. It's such a pleasure to have you here again.
And it is a pleasure indeed to be here.
You came in right on cue. Well done, I'd say.
You're experienced.
Yes, you are experienced at this, and it's always wonderful to have you here. And I know today, for this session, you were going to be speaking about a very important subject that sometimes is elusive, even for those of us willing to take responsibility for creating our own reality, and those of us who have the tools and the information to do that. Sometimes the last thing we want to own is the fact that people in our family and people we work with are reflections. And I invite you to share your wisdom and insights on that.
All right. 'Tis a juicy subject, and one that we will try to hit the high spots during this show. As you know, there are many more layers, but we'll start at the top. You are here in this lifetime to learn, to figure out what it is you need to know to get to the next level in your evolutionary path. And in order to do that, you come in with certain parameters. Like, first of all, you have 7 focuses that you come into with each lifetime, and things that you need to work out that you didn't in other lifetimes. You don't bring wealth with you from another lifetime. You don't bring physicality. What you do bring are emotions. So if you have a lifetime where the emotions were not worked out, where the lessons from that lifetime were not completed, that you can bring forward into your current lifetime. And how do you figure that out? How do you know? Well, one of the primary ways are things that occur in your life that really come to your attention. Things that come right into your face and that bother you, that you stay awake at night for, that you go over and over in your mind and just won't go away, that you have conversations with yourself about. Well, if I'd said this, or I'd said that, or if he'd said that, or if she had done that, over and over again. There's your clue that this is an area that really needs to be looked at, for there's something there for you to learn. And how does that happen? Well, the people that are in your life. Situations also, and we'll touch on that briefly, but we're talking mostly this morning about the people in your life. And of course, who are the people in your life but your family, the people you work with, the people that you are closest to. And that is where those messages come from. For instance, if you have a brother, a sister, a child, a parent who always treats you this very same way over and over again, they're either telling you there's something wrong with you or they're illustrating it, then that is a message for you. That's an issue that you want on a deeper level to look at, to study, to figure out why that is happening to you and what it means. I will give an illustration. The channel has 3 children, the oldest of which has been very much a mirror for her. She has been very adolescent during her lifetime, sort of stuck there. In her reactions to everything, everything has to center around her. There was no adult reactions to things. It was all an adolescent reaction. And as she grew to her 20s, had a child, was very dependent upon the channel for a home, food, all of that. And of course, very much in the channel's face, always worrying about it, always thinking about it, always having imaginary conversations. And finally she came to realize that her daughter was reflecting her own adolescent, her own inner adolescent, and the beliefs and the attitudes that her own inner adolescent was still having. So she worked with that, and she recognized it, which is always the first step, and did some work with her inner adolescent in forgiving herself, forgiving those who had caused these attitudes, these beliefs, and worked on changing those attitudes and beliefs. And lo and behold, now this took many years. We're not trying to say it's a 5-minute process here. Her daughter is now, has a wonderful job, is supporting herself and her son totally, is no longer as economically dependent upon the channel. And where did that change come from? It came from within herself, the changes she made within herself for seeing that out there. And the same thing will happen at your work. Someone that you're working with that bugs you to death, that you just would like to strangle, they're a reflection for you of an issue that you need to work with. And are you willing, dear Patty, to share your...
Yes, because you and I spoke about a number of issues that I asked your help on, and one of the things I spoke to you about in a private consultation was a new work situation, which actually is quite wonderful, and everyone there is very compatible and respectful of one another, caring. But I was beginning to have doubts about how much integrity some of them had, and I was projecting beliefs that I had onto them, and I spoke to you about that. You said something very eye-opening to the fact that for me to remember that each of them was me, and I get to choose how they will be. Words to that effect. So that, that was a big reminder to me how this works, that this reflection thing. Now, is that what you were alluding to when you invited me to share?
Well, that certainly
we've
works.
Talked about so many other things, too.
We were primarily remembering a prior job where a gentleman was very much reflecting many beliefs for you. In this current position, what that is reflecting, the difference between the two, shows you how far you've grown, how far you've come in your own inner attitudes about yourself. For what you see reflected out there is always a reflection of what is inside. Mm-hmm. Nothing changes until you do. Mm-hmm. Is a very wonderful thing to remember. Mm-hmm. So your prior person, I believe his name was Dan. Am I remembering?
Well, there was a job I had a couple of years ago that really was a nightmare situation, and one of the individuals involved in that was, oh, good old, what was his name? See, I wiped the whole thing from my memory bank. It wasn't Dan, it was another name. I isn't coming to me. Don.
Close.
Yes, good memory you have. Oh, yes, and you helped me see how this was just a reflection of what was going on inside of me. And so I was able to do a lot of interchange and able to then move out of that situation. So yes, this recent job that I was talking about is heaven compared to past situations.
So, for instance, if you have within you a belief that you are only worthy if you do X, Y, and Z. For instance, if you are the ultimate pleaser and you only have worth in other people's eyes if you are doing what you have to do to please them, then that is your life. And if you're pleasing others to the exclusion of pleasing yourself, how happy of a life is that going to be? So that is what you reflect. And that is what your co-workers, your family, reflect for you. The demand that you please them in order to be loved or respected or to have worth. That demand, and of course you're rising up to meet it in order to have worth, is not going to stop until you have worth for yourself, until you see yourself as being worthy. If you respect yourself, others will respect you. If you value yourself, you will be valued. It all starts from the inside. And your co-workers, your friends, your loved ones, your family, reflect what you need to see, what you need to hear, if you will see and listen.
This is, yes, you brought up an interesting situation with a friend of mine, a man who also happens to be named Don, who is so self-sacrificing that he never says no to other people because, as he puts it, he's afraid of hurting their feelings. And so he is suffering physically because he has physical ailments that are manifesting. It's a very complex situation. But so in a way, he is like reflecting something back to me. Maybe you can help me with this, seeing this, because I myself am learning more and more to set my boundaries and express myself and assert myself. But I have this man in my reality, a friend, who is so opposite of that. And this Dawn, I believe you've had occasion to meet.
We have. We would say, dear one, that in this situation, that it is a mirror for you to simply see what is the wrong way and to realize that there are still tiny pockets of that belief within you that love, respect, value has to be earned. And it is worth, and you are loved. You are loved. The problem is, for a lot of people, what their definition of love is.
Yes.
For a lot of people, to be loved means to be accepted unconditionally, which is the proper way, but what is the definition of unconditional? The channel had an acquaintance whose definition of unconditional love was that anything they did was okay.
Uh-huh.
That's not quite it. And especially since they were doing destructive things toward themselves and toward others, and yet they had the belief that they were not loved because the people in their lives, the channel being one, did not absolutely approve of everything that they did.
Uh-huh.
So you need to look at the definition of unconditional love. And that is what everyone is searching for, is love.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you believe that you're going to get that love? What are your beliefs? I have to be this way, I have to do this, I have to, etc., 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 earning being one of the main ones, in order to be loved. And so this gentleman truly believes the only way he'll be loved, accepted, respected, honored,
Mm-hmm.
valued, is if he gives in and does what other people ask him to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that is physically damaging him, because he's not returning that favor into himself.
Not at all.
And you're seeing that as close to you,
Mm-hmm.
to dig out those last pockets within yourself that believe that there is something you need to do to earn that which you are still looking for.
That's interesting. What is coming to mind? Because I've tried to be more and more detached, understanding that he is on his own path, that when asked, I've offered my suggestions. I pointed out how he kind of is in this self-sacrificing mode. But if he's not willing to let that in, I don't want to get all caught up in that. And so I am respecting who he is and what path he's on, and not seeing this as a failure. But maybe there is some part of me that does feel like I'm not good enough at what I'm suggesting or teaching because he hasn't gotten it. Is there something like that in there?
We would say definitely there is your deep desire to be of service.
Yes.
That in this situation is not being fully received.
Not at all.
And so there's that part of you that wants to shout and yell and say, I know the answer.
Yes.
If you would just listen to me, I could fix your whole life. So you have to see that part of yourself that is still the fixer.
Ah.
Much, much less than before.
Much less,
Much
yes.
less. But still little there. And the part who believes that they're right.
Ah. That one.
Mm-hmm. And the other person's choices obviously aren't. So there is still little nuggets there.
A little tidying up to be done there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But if those of you in the listening, watching audience, think about what is in your dreams every night, what you think about when you wake up in the middle of the night, these conversations that you go over and over and over in your heads. What are they reflecting for you? What messages are they putting out there for you to see? For we will tell you that when you see the message, when you get the message, when you do the work inside yourself to answer that message, then the situation will resolve itself and resolve itself not always in exactly the way you would think it would, but it will change. And look at how it changes and see what additional message it has come. Like the channel with her daughter now being fully mature. Well, okay, we'll qualify that. Almost fully mature. Totally supporting herself and her son now. That was a situation that went on for years. And it has changed now. Now, there are still a couple other areas left to clean up, so to speak, but it's so much better now. But it took a lot of work to see what she was reflecting and how she needed to work to change it. Beliefs, attitudes, those are so much a part of what you put out there. If you have a belief ingrained in you from childhood, from your parents, from your peers, your childhood friends, your school mates, that there is something wrong with you, to the point that you believe it and you keep having it reflect in your lifetime, the only way that's going to stop is if you ferret out those beliefs and you change them. And you just say to yourself that that's a belief that was given to me by someone else. I have to figure out what I believe about myself and make sure that those beliefs are not coming from those around you.
Mm-hmm.
It is part of the essential way to change what you're putting in your face, is changing those attitudes and beliefs that you have about yourself, that most of the time, we would say at least 90% of the time, are coming from other people.
That's so important to get, because it's almost part of our culture, our upbringing, to automatically blame others for what's going on, for what things that we don't like, giving our power away in that way. What comes to mind is that I might mention the book that I wrote, A New Spirituality Beyond Religion, which has a lot of the details of these principles we're talking about, how each of us creates our own reality and how we can change our reality into something more successful and happier by changing ourselves. So getting back to our wonderful conversation here, Dillon. I just got a signal that we have about 2.5 minutes left, so.
Well, we think we have hit the top layer. We will add very much in the vein of where the conversation was going, that the best way to change your reality, what is in your life, is to love yourself more and more each day, and to find what keeps you from doing that and change it. The more you love and accept and value and respect yourself, the more your outside reality and the people in your life will love and respect and value you.
Mm-hmm. That really is the heart of it in more ways than one. For those who may have tuned in a bit late, my guest has been Dillon, a wonderful, loving being who is channeled by my human friend, Lyn Eyman. And Dillon, we have maybe a minute or so left, if there's something you'd like to conclude with.
Well, it has been such a joy to speak of this, and we hope that this has helped someone, has touched them, opened them up to what they can do to change their lives. As we said earlier, nothing changes until you do. And with that, dear one, we will depart, And to all of you, blessed be, dear ones, blessed be.
Thank you so much, Dillon. If anyone would like to learn more about what you've seen and heard on this show, why the closing credits will have a phone number and an email address, also a mailing address. So I invite you to call, ask questions. And you're back, Lyn, so I want to thank you so much
You're
for
very
being
welcome.
here today. And one of these times we're going to have you be a guest and talk about crystals, because you know a lot about how crystals are used in healing and the various properties of different kinds of crystals.
Oh, they're great fun to work with.
Yes, so we'll have that on our agenda too. Thank you so much, and thank you for watching.